당은 저기 동아를 주위에 탑 다양한 대화 땡기 대화 토비하다 그 동아를 주위에 탑람 냠는 제기 람 예전 바세에 될래야 좀 저기 람 림바 냠는 제발에 때네 다 그 동아를 주는 마도시에 탑 매발에 지제 디네 자당한 람 냠는 제기 림바데 간레선다 신의 람림 나라 아니 기고 중요한 람 예전 바다 중요한 람 예전 바 아니 기고 침별람 예전 바 세시 림바 숨제 다 기고 침별람 예전 바 세야들라 아니 대바 침별 주님는 제 책으로와 자다 델라야 아니 저기 가소래 너다가 니세나 규파르도 심베 태바세다 지고 상아들지 태바세가 냠는 지역이 안 느린 바에 니여바시 예.
Good evening. We're continuing to look at the method to attain liberation from suffering. And the method to attain liberation from suffering is to practice the graduated stages of the path to attain liberation from suffering. Other than training one's mind, transforming one's mind through the techniques presented, there is no other way that one can attain a state of lasting peace. And the trainings that one engages in, these are divided into 3 sets. There is the training shared with a practitioner of initial capacity, the training shared with a practitioner of intermediate capacity, and thirdly, the training that is unique to a practitioner of greatest capacity. And this third, the training unique to a practitioner of greatest capacity, is the Mahayana Dharma. And this is divided into 2, that of the Sutra and the Tantric vehicles. And the Sutra vehicle is also called the Perfection vehicle.
당저 규파르도 침베 태바세 등은 전주 람림 나라시에게 태바 침베 취념래 안 되냐면 제라 나버 전주 셈도 안에 가서 니제 잠 니제 곰 되네 전주 쇼도 셈게 되네 안도 파진 주게 냠는 제디 다 파진 주게 냠는 제디 다 먼저 안 되게 없어 다 산지고 방 퇴비 치료도 다 태바 침베 취념는 제다디 디로와
The division of the Mahayana Dharma into the Sutra, or the Sutra aspect of the Mahayana Dharma, is specifically training in great love and great compassion to the extent where one generates bodhicitta, the determination to become a Buddha in order to lead each and every being without exception to Buddhahood. And thereafter, in order to actually fulfill that aspiration, one trains in the cultivation of the 6 transcendent perfections, all with a motivation to become a Buddha oneself, so as to become the most skilled of guides, and thereby be able to quickly lead others to attain their own enlightenment. So that's the Sutra division of the Mahayana Dharma.
The
division of the Mahayana Dharma, that is that of mantra or tantra, has 4 divisions, the 4 classes of tantra. In English, action, performance, yoga, and highest yoga tantras.
바로 심베 태베 냠는 제약이 잠니제 잔주셈 게 되네 파준 주게 냠네 근데 냠는 제 안디가라 당 맞중아이 냠는 제 고거래.
In order to engage in the tantric paths, one needs to have already trained well in the sutra paths, those of love, compassion, bodhicitta, and the 6 perfections.
네 냠는 지도가 랑아서 나가 냠는 제다 다제 유대 오마 숨데라 자유 주기 난주기 숨되게 냠는 제나데라 델야다 마주기 넘이 제데다 파르도 침비죽 냠는 제세 디순고마 다직티가르 순고라스네 천지기 나주다 천미기 나주어서데 모두스는 냠는 제다 직sun gore.
Of the 4 classes of Tantra, these can be divided into 2, where the first 3 are grouped together and called the lower Tantras, with the 4th and highest Yoga Tantra being called the higher Tantra. The 3 lower Tantras, these are of action, performance, and Yoga Tantra. These have 2 subdivisions within them, the Yoga with signs and the Yoga without signs.
당전 나젤라미기 세 냠는 제가 될라다 될이야 아니 기림다 조름세 기림이 냠는 제야다 조름 냠는 제야세데 온도시니 예순 거래.
And the upper Tantra, highest Yoga Tantra, that also has 2 divisions, and these are the generation stage and the completion stage.
나 기림기 냠에 세야들이야 아니 난셀레 거는 게림들라나 차라 용거래 네 림발 마선에 되네게 용거래 다 되네게 조름 냠는 제들 림발 마선에 림방아로 순거래 아니 가소래 류에 마외 아니 세면 귤류에서 아니 손죽세야데 류에 마외 세면 아니 귤류에서 손죽세네 아니 림발 마선에 림바도 승가 순거래 조름 냠는 제들 류엔, 마웬, 세면, 규류, 외사, 손죽.
The 2 divisions of highest Yoga Tantra, generation and completion stage, have their own divisions as well. The generation stage has a coarse and a subtle level, and then the completion stage, as we saw last time, has 5 divisions, namely those of physical isolation, verbal isolation, mental isolation, the illusory body, and clear light.
나라 당보 기름기 냠는제 되네 안에 줄류에 세대 냠는제 되네 나외에 세대 냠는제 되네 세면 세대 되네 규류에 되네 외사세 되네 안에 손죽세 도스네 림반 마선 도스네 냠는제 나게 다 잡아 가서 나줄레미기 냠는제 나들라 난 안에 류에 세대와 당보데 류마이 외사 되네 손죽세 나도 류에 마외 세면 귤류 외사 손죽세 당보 냠는지 당보 기름 냠는지 기름 냠는지 사회 제라 하는 가서는 류에 냠는지 되네 나웬 로정제 되네 세면 세대장 되네 귤류 발장 되네 류 가서 외사 세대자 되네 대대 손죽세대지 냠는지 고래지 류엔 세대 직제 나웬 세대 니제 세면 세대 수바드제 귤류 세대 시바드제 근데 외사 세지도와 나바드제 송죽 세등 잘고래.
So let me give those 5 again, because I got them a little mixed up. I as the translator. So as first is the physical isolation, the verbal isolation, mental isolation, then the illusory body, so that's 4, and the 5th is the stage of union. So again, physical isolation, verbal isolation, mental isolation, the illusory body, and the state of union.
네 돈이 외세세다 비외세세 니용고래 다들 시에도 외세세도 돈이 외세들이 외세세티나 나 장극엽도와 외세세도와 이 말에 셈면지도와 되네 귤류 되네 외세신 되네 송죽세네 죽도와 지상 주다 류엔제 나웬제 세면제 귤류제 외세제 송죽세 죽도와
Okay, third time lucky. Then the 6 divisions of the completion stage: physical isolation, verbal isolation, mental isolation, illusory body, clear light, and sixthly, the union. Within clear light, there are 2 different degrees of subtlety, perhaps, or 2, the example clear light and the meaning clear light. But in terms of the 6 levels of the completion stage, the 5th one, clear light, that refers to the meaning clear light. So again, just to try and make it clear after it wasn't before, we have the physical isolation, verbal isolation, mental isolation, then illusory body, clear light, and then the state of union.
And adu say that in zorim yemlen chele rimba di trukti rimba trukti nyamlen chele jisan dela rimba tade truk sung kore dene gi rimba nga sia da shi sia dene ngori ni donda trukre ko du chen de ko ta dina ngi sia de rimba trukti re.
When the completion stage is presented with these 6 divisions, that's a more expansive way of dividing the completion stage. The completion stage can be condensed into, not into 6, but into 5 divisions or even 4 divisions.
그래서 류엔나 ngaweni 지gle 장을 잡제 베베시 가시 나래야 송여도 그러니까 류엔 장을 맞아제 ngawen세 장을 잡제 안 마송여도 다 nga마도 차고만 제사데 니가 곧 이유도 나래 니가 나래 요래.
For example, the 5-fold division has the first 2 stages, that of the physical isolation and verbal isolation, grouped together as one. And then the subsequent ones will be unchanged: mental isolation, illusory body, clear light, and union. So due to condensing or combining the first 2, physical and verbal isolation, then instead of having a division of the completion stage divided into 6, it will be divided into 5.
어디네 자다가 저기 당보 가르스네 잠니제 잠바다 니제 삼다 곰 데네 잔주 셈게 데네 파션 두기 냠nen제 안디제 사회제로 당하게 냠nen체야라 네 가르쳐 버렸네 저기 도실로 벨라마치다네 라마칭이다 대바치다네 네 가서 원슈 데네 안도시네 안닝아 저 라메드네 원슈비 갑라다 담시다 안데 돈바티게 송제 안데 내가게 됐다디 냠nen제야디게 안젤이야 장도르지야디 좀 바로 되네세.
The way one trains in the Mahayana Dharma with both its divisions of Sutra and Tantra, first one trains in love and compassion, generating bodhicitta, and then trains in the actual 6 perfections. Thereafter, one has the required basis to then engage in mantra training. And to moving into the training of mantra, one first relies on an authentic Vajra master and receives an initiation, and with the initiation comes vows and commitments, and one engages in guarding those commitments.
Atisha, I did kissing that in the kissing magic shoes however in a direct good so check and get sure.
And that's what I've covered now is the review of what we looked at last time a couple of weeks ago.
That didn't my share did that in that the niggy yamlin chidaki in Zuki Kiwuchung, Churi Chisun Lamjin by Yamlechida, Yamle Javadi, Dustin and Jeremichigi, and Dustin Song and Denmark. This Mutua Jelame Yang Masa, Deterdu, Tusu, Yamsu, she. And the Daso Jejuk Namlang, Tsui Dishindu, Nyamso Langshi, Jie Sung, Jie Dambar Zeba Yi, Nyamdo, Jie Lama, Dundu Gomne, Sung Lalang Yijin, Dombar Samlang, also Rana Yikuyu, Gwene, Dumbar Jao.
Tonight we turn to the text, so page 48, the middle of the second last paragraph, so we're in the outline, a summary of the path. So my translation's only slightly different, but in the text you have before you, it's a final sentence in the second last paragraph. It starts Gyatso Rinpoche. But I'll read my own translation. This is how Gyatso Rinpoche himself practiced and he urges all those who are his students to practice precisely in the same manner too. Keeping his spiritual instructions in mind, visualize Geshe Rinpoche sitting before you. Whilst reciting a song of spiritual experience, imagine him exhorting you directly with a calm, powerful, penetrating voice to practice this teaching as described, to subdue your own mind.
당아로도 되니게 냠는 제고 그래 사실 송루와 되니 엔자다 제람에 장 대다르도 투소 냠수 시에스 지난 제를 뭐지기나 당번 냠는 두스 냠 나와래지 당번 잠니제 안에 가서 그래 다 기부 중요람 이름 발로 장 되니 기부 딩게 기부 딩다 투모람 이름 발로 장 되니 기부 침별람 이름 바 잠니제 장주 셈 아니 파진 중에 냠는도 시르곰 곰 되니 냠는 나 안디 제래야 안에 상하도르제 대비게 안에 왕슈 되는 왕슈제 안에 내가 냠는 두스 나와래지 대다도 투소 냠수 되니
The first sentence, this is how Geshe Rinpoche himself practiced. Geshe Rinpoche himself set the example of first engaging in the training shared with a practitioner of initial capacity, and building on that strength of mind that he cultivated there, he engages in the second level, the training shared with practitioners of intermediate capacity, deepening his insight, strengthening his determination, broadening his outlook. He was then able to engage in the third level, in the trainings unique to a practitioner of greatest capacity. And these are the trainings of the Mahayana, starting with the sutra level of training in love, compassion, bodhicitta, and the six perfections, and thereafter he engaged in the practices of the mantra vehicle, where he first, having developed the basis of the sutra trainings, he then, through relying on fully qualified Vajramaster, received initiation and committed to guarding the samayas that he received in the initiation.
나 다소 제주바 남라항 세드 다소 제주바 남라항 세드다 가는 주세요. 그러다 가는 주기 제 라미게 안에 아지 제소장 제 라마리아 대바다 이치제제 하나주 제 라미게 숨기 람림리아 퇴섬 곰숨제 냠는 제한 가는 이나이나서 그러다 다소 세드 가는 주 제소 장선 진죽 세대다 제라메게 제소라 람 제라말레 대바다 이시제 대라메게 제 림치고 송셰비기다 나중에 대체래야 람림 침발라서 백중리야 퇴섬 곰숨 냠네 제되게 디게서 그래 다소 제주 남랑 세대.
The final sentence again in the first paragraph of the section. This is how Geshe Rinpoche himself practiced, and he urges all those who are his students to practice precisely in this manner too. Lama Tsongkhapa set an unsurpassable example in his life, and he composed his texts, including this one, presenting exactly how he trained, which was precisely in accordance with all the great masters before him, and he encourages his students, ourselves, to train in exactly the same way as he did in order to achieve the self-same result.
대시 제르면 코롱기 냠는 나와나 신진을 수 있는 추신도 있는 추파 림바치거와 림바 추다 튠비게 되네게 그 림바신의 냠솔롱 고래 세대 당보 기부 중요한 남기 림바라 로차야 되네 기부 기부 중다 투모할 남기 림바라 로차 되네 기부 침별 남기 림바 로정 제도 잠니제 냠는제 되네 장주샘 냠는제 되네 파준 중이 냠는제 어디제는 왕냠수 왕슈 되네 상하도지 람냠스 렘바 시데 냠수 롱시 디나신제네 냠네 제고레 사지 마송와레 쇼레 냠수 롱시 제 담바르 제바 인스로.
Here, Geshe Rinpoche is urging all those who are his students to practice precisely in this manner too. So I want to emphasize then this last part of the sentence, practice precisely in this same manner too. Geshe Rinpoche has presented these texts with the trainings that we need to engage in a specific order. He didn't randomly write them down, nor should we randomly train in them. In order to achieve our desired result, we need to train in the precise sequence that he has presented and that he himself trained in.
Je Lama dundu gomne sung lang lang ye shin and domber samla city garso was an anju Lam Rim da denegita jermche domber seba de garson anju ya nyamsu lang shi ba domyagi peje de gar tsik de garasena Lam Rim chembo Lam Rim rimba nyamlang rimba Lam Rim che peje de che da Lam Rim chembo da jing da chungla so basumje dene ane nga ko nyamle je ngarim chembala so ba de dene ki mangbo sungcha gero on diso da sungorwa sungde dirwa jesa da ngan ju gi de Lam Rim chembo do lo de kapla Lam Rim chembo ba nga zo lo je du che nyamle lo ne nyamle je bi kapla ya ane je rim che so su gi duin de ye samje an de ye samje an di ba chik ting zo lo de ane samda de kapla ane je rim che ngale ya sungu ye so be dingale ya de 틱티 제름 지금 시에는 무슨 순구 선배게 두스네 anga 저기 삼고 두스당고 그래지 송라라 계신 돈벌 삼라 세대죠 제라메 둔도 곰네스 송랑랑 계신 돈벌 삼라 세대 돔세대 마 송여죠 근데 송송아 송구도 선배 되게 셈래야 되네 삼당고 그래지
Coming to the final paragraph at the bottom of page 48. Keeping his spiritual instructions in mind, visualize Gyatso Rinpoche sitting before you. So this we should take as advice for when we are either reflecting on or reading his teachings, to really feel his presence before us. Because these texts that he composed, such as the Song of Spiritual Experience, or the short Lam Rim, which our text here, the Essence of Refined Gold, is a commentary to, or the middling length Lam Rim, or the greater length Lam Rim, or the tantric version, the Stages of the Path of Secret Mantra. Whichever of the Lam Rim texts we are studying or reflecting on, we should feel Gyatso Rinpoche's presence before us, around us, and the purpose of doing this is to remind ourselves that these texts were composed for our benefits, and therefore we should take these as personal spiritual instructions, as if not just that we're reading these words or reflecting on them, but it's as if he were saying them directly to us. Again, I'll read that first sentence again. Keeping his spiritual instructions in mind, visualize Gyatso Rinpoche sitting before you.
Samla, then Moso Range Yiku when Temper Chao said. Tango said the Soso Range Semle, Yiku said, the Negadu, some Daji doing the Kabla, and the chick, Ya Deva to keep it, Deva Be, Mazlamalia, Deva Shu, Yesena, Sosolia, Chixemlia, Twal Mason, Shu, Jura, Denegi, Chicky, Deva Shuchumuki, and the Galong, and the Lugi, and Namgu, the Migi, Chikia, Milia, and Chima de la Sobadine, Ungurua, Michu de la Songurua, and the Negin Yikubi, the Negi, some Daja, and the Dungo Regine.
Reading the final part. Whilst reciting, whichever text it may be, such as his Song of Spiritual Experience, imagine him exhorting you directly with a calm, powerful, penetrating voice to practice this teaching as described, to subdue your own mind. This is how we should take the Dharma teachings. Again, whether one's receiving a teaching, reading a book, or reflecting on its meaning, we should take it as personal advice, and we should relate to the teacher, in this case Gyatso Rinpoche, with a mind of unwavering confidence in him, to the point that we can feel an emotional stirring from deep within our hearts, and with such deep conviction, in this way, engage with the meaning of what he has taught.
지난 된버를 자오세 된세 된건 반 치니 바 칸네 바 된바 시들 된 되게 가서 그랬는데 당한 저기 다디디 람림 세션 마디 송에도 가다 제르미 송에 람림 뒤뒤 람림 충어 람림 뒤뒤인데다 자와도 마도 스탄게 되게 송도와 제가 되네 자다 람림 뒤뒤인데 람림 뒤뒤인데 아 저기 롤파 신지 파 치마 된게 진짜 롤이야 아 저기 된다디게 삼당지도 세된고 그래서 제가데 짐제 다 치디파 칸마 된게 되게 다 된다디 롤바 삼당 검디갑라 소소게 치 칸바 되게 람림 뒤뒤게 치디 된디갑라 제름제 뒤뒤 오소 예제 디 치디 제름제 소소가라야 송기 삼백에 매바체 안델리아 라마라 데바체치도 제 되네게 안 치디 된게 제 치기 된다디 도스체네 짐바시나 삼다제 두스된고 그래지 디송을 된다
The image that's being created here, I'd encourage you to internalize this and utilize this. So when reading a Dharma book, for example, when reciting the short Lam Rim or the Song of Spiritual Experience, the text to which our Essence of Refined Gold is a commentary to, imagine Gyatso Rinpoche before you as you read the book or recite the text, and imagine that these aren't just dry words on a page that you're reading like a novel, but rather that this is personal spiritual instruction coming from Gyatso Rinpoche's mouth, directly for you, directly to you, and composed and recited for you. So here we're creating a close and personal and intimate relationship with Gyatso Rinpoche, so as to open our heart, open our mind to the meaning of these words.
Lam Rim Text 저기 로리아 신제 로리아 칸닝하니 교야메바이네 당한 저기 Lam Rim Text 바 로디 갑라 다 로디 안 지바르바 로디 갑라야 치티 바 지름 정할 송구여 선배 삼다 디던다데 삼다도 셈데다 Lam Rim Text 나라야 안제보 체제 추숨이 람이진바 냠는 제다다 내가게 냠는 제다 차상 뒤시 되되되 송샤 된다 닝보 차상 뒤시 직 뒤뒤시 된다데 차상 디나도 송샤 교여봐 디송걸
For those who memorize texts such as the Song of Spiritual Experience, then when you're reciting the text, engage in this relationship with Gyatso Rinpoche. And if you haven't memorized the text, it's no loss at all. Read it, but read it with the awareness of Gyatso Rinpoche's presence and his connection with you. Because within a text such as the Song of Spiritual Experience, all the trainings that are shared with practitioners of initial and intermediate capacity, as well as the trainings that are unique to a practitioner of supreme capacity, both the Sutra and Tantra, are included in there. So therefore, it's an extremely effective text or beneficial text to recite or to read whilst reflecting on the meaning and doing so in a way that's very personal to oneself.
아니네 자다 저기 되니게 람림 다 냠는 제도 갑라 하나 저기 다에 지금 라마 제행아 랑게 소식이 라마 되다 다 제르마 친이 오 이르메 삼다 지비지기야 당한 저 라마데 제르미시요 뭐스바 주의시야 알아들이야 아니 지게 안가서 심주 뒤야 당한줄이야 아니 지게 냠는 제기 림바 땡캔데 라마 두스는 라마데 두스야 샤려 바레 라미 남바 샤와치레스 디네 자당은 코로니마 다 코로나 주기도 진의 냠는 제 코로나 주기라 또배 냠는 두 총바데 총제 다 디네게 제와다 셴 심제 동아단 자되다 디기데 된되게 삼배 잠바다 제위 토네 마랑줄이야 두신 랍진 나샤바레 삼제 두신의 라미기 and the kusung tusum yundian jenje tembaina della devaligro devaligorwa sidan du sin deva jenje and du sin samda duskan so nyamnaje getting chembore dangal ya du sulobden chewa pema se getting chembo shushi in samje 마도 두스는 삼다이도 갑라 되는 소소와를 셈리야 안 소와디 지기 이쿠에 그 소와디 리거로와 되는 길에도 두스는 라미 구송투기 된제 라미게 소소랑 랑리아 최송셔바디 깨진 침보 라마데 랑리아 진침보 깨진 침보 25인비 전제 온두스네 아 저기 두스네 로야다 돈다 삼다에 두셔고래서와
I encourage you to take to heart what is being presented here. And when you're reading a text, or engaging in meditation, or receiving a teaching, to do so with the understanding that is being presented here, because it's being presented for a specific purpose, and that is to open our heart to the teacher before us, whether the teacher is communicating to us directly verbally, in other words in person, or through the pages of a text. Through opening our heart to them, we open our heart to the possibility of radical transformation. So we should, when reading a text, have the feeling that the author, such as Gyatso Rinpoche, is present with us. And if we are calling to mind our own spiritual teacher, or the teacher from whom we are receiving teachings directly, we should see that teacher as being indivisible in essence from the great lamas such as Gyatso Rinpoche. Indivisible in essence. And recognize that just like Gyatso Rinpoche trained so hard for so many lifetimes, as well as thereafter taught and composed these texts, these were all done motivated by love and compassion for all beings. Similarly, those who've continued the lineage to the present day are also motivated by love and compassion for all sentient beings. And those current day teachers possess the same qualities of body, speech and mind as these great masters. Bearing this in mind, reflect on the tremendous kindness of our spiritual teachers, and seeing them as indivisible in essence from great lamas such as Gyatso Rinpoche, feel their presence, open ourselves to them, and in this way we open our heart to transformation.
Aninma Dedaryang Jelame Sida, Jeremichima Sonshagyo Lam Rim City, Jelames Dedar Gudan, Debu Techingi, Lamcho Nigar Gobi, Tumon Lam, Jijin Gene, KB Debungi, Gonla Dene, Gudi Geshe She, Junior Yonzo, Menga Dembadi, Dajo Toba Dena, Dembaraja, Nanjuangi Yanyam Dedargi, Tardio Dajan Dishin, Gyatso Lo Sashi, Songdua.
The text continues at the top of page 49. I'll read again my own translation. So here we come to verses 42 and 43 from the Song of Spiritual Experience. Having cultivated in precisely that way the required paths shared by both the supreme mahayana causal and resultant paths, rely on a protecting, wise navigator to enter the great ocean of the classes of tantra. Through relying on perfect and complete spiritual instructions, make meaningful these freedoms and opportunities you have obtained. I, a yogi, have practiced in this manner. You who aspire for liberation should do likewise. And then just to say, this translation will be on the YouTube page, just under the video in the instructions. Within there will be the translation.
Dedar sede tanga zu lam nyamlen che rimba sigoro dedar de sinyelia tanga zu song shaba na she shaba chasada dedar se nyamlen che rimba di garesen gyuda devi techin gis je lam chok se je za tanga zu lam nyamlen che rimba de la ane gibu chung da tumo lam rimba gibu ting da tumo lam rimba ta dina le chodo gyoba de gibu chenbi ge lam rimba nyamlen rimba se de rimba The
verse starts with the first two lines, having cultivated in precisely that way the required paths shared by both the supreme mahayana causal and resultant paths. This then is making reference to the trainings that are shared with the practitioner of initial and intermediate capacity, as well as thirdly, the trainings that are unique to a practitioner of greatest capacity.
That Lam Rimba Nyamlin Cheg, Sumba, Kasa Kibu Chembi, lam yirimba se de la ane rimbal masna ni che gyuparo de shimbe tepe lam yirimba nyamlen che da chida an devo ane sanga durji tepe lam yirimba nyamlen che da se de gyudan devi techin ye lam cho se de lam nyamlen che cho de lam cho de la de ne gi ni yore se de gyuparo de shimbe lam yirimba nyamlen che da chi che an devo sanga durji tepe lam yirimba nyamlen che da ni se gyudan devi techin ye lam yin cho ni se lam cho ni se de di ni yore se jo gyuparo도 침배 냠lenche 바세 바로 뒤에 냠lenche gyula고 gyuparo도 침배 냠lenche 다 하세요. 지단 제부세다 상황도 지들 남냠냠. 지다 태바 침배기 취에 냠lenche들라 안에 gyuparo도 침배 남냠냠lenche 다 하세요. 도유 턴데 남냠lenche 직제 제부 상황도 지들 남냠lenche 다 남이름 바 데라 니요레서 태 기부 침배 남이름 냠lenche 다 데라.
Read the second line again. By both the supreme Mahayana causal and resultant paths. The Mahayana, as we've heard, has two divisions, that of Sutra and Tantra. The Sutra path is also called the perfection vehicle. So the Sutra vehicle, the perfection vehicle, and that is also known as the causal paths. And then the Tantric vehicle, that are the resultant paths. So both of these are included within the Mahayana. So the Mahayana has these two divisions, to the causal perfection and the resultant tantric vehicles.
상아 도지 티베 람 냠는 제발라 녀래야 아니 뒤에 감도 손제 베게 뒤에 냠는 제 림바 녀래 로래야 장도르 제장 대 장비 제라 안디 상아 도지 티베 람 냠는 제고 벤자 규파르도 쳔바세야 돼 뒤에 감도 손베 람 냠는 제 gyulpasha ane dije dela gomba di nyamne chebala tene dijela sanga dorje tibe lam nyamne chego baza dede jebu se sanga dorje jebu se duschen jewa japna jamna japchoya chi gyogore japchugore 제가 gyuparu tchimba se 되가 lam nyamne chede gyulago kimsan karela gyene ko jebu shongurwa 제가 ko gyure da jebu de karela de 지상 고 규례에서도 고 냠는 제 당보 냠는 제디 냠는 제 발에 때네 안 상아 도지티벨람 냠는 제와서 상아 도지티벨람 냠는 제로 디기 제부로 차르고로 제가 코니 규파로도 심에 태와서야다 제보탈 파르도시 티벨람 냠는 제를 좀 봐서야 돼 규단 제보라고 해야 돼 김사로 되는 제거.
The reason for using terms cause and result is to show a relationship both of a sequence, but also of dependency. Because when we hear about either a cause or a result, we know there is a relationship. If something's a result, it requires a cause. Or if something is a cause, we know a result will follow. So here the Mahayana is divided into two, the causal and the resultant. And there's a specific sequence in training. In order to engage in the resultant trainings of the tantric vehicle, one needs to have created or cultivated the causal trainings, which are the sutra vehicle, in particular, the trainings of the perfection vehicle. So that is the meaning of cause and result in terms of the Mahayana paths. Through cultivating the cause of training in the perfection vehicle, one is thereby cultivating the quality of mind that is required in order to thereafter engage in the trainings in the resultant paths of the tantric vehicle.
Ndi nyamlen je yudi nga je jebu de sanje ko phande chire sanje ji ane sanje yu ku sung tu ku sung tu sum yende ane sanje ji shingham ane sanje jege denige zeba tinle de jebu ba sha jisan dene yanza da denige sanje gi ane kuda lu kuda ane shingamda zeba chile de yang zulia jebu je di tobiala di tobala ane ngasa yuko ba toye di tobala nga zu nyamnen jugar sa oresene jidan jamni jokom ane janju semgo pajin juge nyamnen jebale dene yudi jamni de janju sem pajin juge nyamnen yu nyamnen di jebale dene ane jebu sa yuko ba top tu ores dene enza ane dongagi 가서 규파로 주신 말 남이 봐 세야돼 규세야돼 자라도 전에 직송 거래 규세도 한 산요 고바 토야 될 규가래라는 제부 가래라도 규디 가래 산요 고바도 규디 잠니 이제 자주 셈다 파슈주기 냠는 제 파준주 냠는디 규샤 니 냠는 제발에 때네 제부 가래 용구래에서는 산요 고바도 그래야지 지난 되가 냠는 제게 림바들라 규파로도 집에 타봐세야 돼 도스전에 대신 아주 규세의 규디 동안 규르바 제보들 상하도 집 남내자 시에와 다들 시에의 규세의 파주주기 냠는데 규디시에 디 제보 상이고 방도 받으시.
There's another way that one can express the mahayana causal and resultant vehicles, which is the causes are those causes which lead to the result of enlightenment. Those causes would be contained within the perfection vehicle. In other words, when trained in love, compassion, generating bodhicitta and the 6 perfections, those are the causes in order to give rise to the result of Buddhahood. And to expand on the result of Buddhahood, one would include there the 3 bodies of a Buddha, the Pure Land of a Buddha, the qualities of a Buddha such as the power of a Buddha, the Buddha's enlightened activities and so forth. So all of that would be included in the result, with the cause being the transcendent perfections as well as bodhicitta.
다디 제보세야디 대신일 세야디 가서 제보세야디 규파로도 침바디샤 디기 제볼 마샤르와 다디 제보 딜레고 말 제보리야 상이고 봐라 지바래 상이고 봐 지상은 저기 제보세야디 다데 나가 냠는 치도 가르 공고에서는 규디 가르서는 제림나 조림 냠는제 엔 제보 상이고 봐 토야 되리와 지사다 디 곰디갑라 하나 저기 가서래 다데 nga 주게 람 냠는 제베 내가 불랑 nga 주 상계기 구송 투숨 연대 nga 주 요 말이라 미 매바 있나야 땅nga 주게 다데 nga게 냠는 제베 람 냠는 제베 내가 나 아나 상계기 제보 다 용수다 봐 시세기 용수다 봐서 류다 봐 아네 가서래 신다 봐서야다 코르다 봐서 제바다 봐서 다 봐시여로 봐 류 다바산 산지 수구디르와 꾸이 류디게르와 다네 띠 싱다바사 산지 슈세 띠기고 띵고디게 시거로와 아네 다서 코르다바세디 디나디 코롱 코르 하디게 시거로와다 코르코티 아네 제바다바세네 제바친레디 디소라 제자데가 저기 기신 데니기 시디 산지기 제부래 가지고 다 변이 되어가는 람냠는 지나 제부디 산지 고마토디 디토고래 내가 냠는 제자갑데 산지 고마토 제부디 토고래 제부를 해버려 말에 냠는 제 귀내가블라 냠는 제 개발도 토비하기 제부들라 산지 고마나 해버지 매버와 매반자 다데가 냠는 제베갑라 다디디 산지기 데니기 꿀류디게 나아줄 주요 말데 이나야 대단 넘버 2버지 나주게 다데네 고매요 제부 대단 남바 지부지야지 되네 양아자 샤셔 고매요레스 고매다데 람 냠레 집에 내갑나 근데 제부 용서 답아시다 넘바 튠비게 람지 삼다지 고매요레스 대단 지부지야를 삼다 고매요레스 되네서 제부 상하타 봐라레스 제부디 다딩아저 람 냠는 제 마음바도 토비하기 제부 상요 고파디 다데 냠는 집에 내갑라 딩오수도 요 말데 이내 대단 넘바 튠바지 디 인습에 매바체제 고매요레스 인자디에서 제부도지 타발라고 해야지 람 냠는 집에 내갑나 제부디나 넘바 튠바지 르 매바체네 고매요바 인자 한 제부도지 타바서 민디디 투스 첸데 되는다고 그러지.
Further way to express, to explain causal and resultant paths. So we looked at one where the relationship between sutra and tantra. Second, just looking at it from the sutric perspective. And now a third, we'll be looking at it solely from the mantric perspective or the tantric perspective. So here, one would say the causes will be the generation and completion stage, and the results will be Buddhahood. And then to look at that in more detail, the resultant Buddhahood can be trained in right now, even whilst one is unenlightened. And that then relates to something we looked at last week, which is training in the 4 purities. So one is engaging in tantric practice, in tantric training, and training in the resultant Buddhahood right now, even as an unenlightened being. And one trains in the 4 purities, the purity of the body, the purity of the abode, and the purity of retinue, and the purity of activities. The purity of the body was where one generates divine pride and recognizes oneself as a deity or as a Buddha. In terms of the training in the purity of the abode, then this is recognizing one's surroundings as being in the nature of the mandala, and then one's companions, one's retinue, as being enlightened beings, as being deities, as well as then training in the activities of a Buddha. So in this way, one trains in the resultant Buddhahood now whilst still engaging in the causes, the accumulation of the causes for Buddhahood. So these two can be done together. In such an instance, it would be called the resultant Vajra vehicle. So that would be, in this third way of understanding, the causal and resultant vehicle. This is an explanation of the resultant Vajra vehicle.
Sanje sosugi dunlu yobi mebache sanje pani shuyi mebache ane di sanje ki kuyu den di nahin jing ara sugi tobyage danda ane jamninje gom chanshu semje an pashi jugi nyamlenje di tobyage danda yudi ma nga zu nyamlenje ma do nga sanje jumde ku ngoyin sembe gomgo marwa desa de nyamlenje be kapla sanje di pane miyul sha 디 토비에게 된다 디기 토비에게 규디 가서 갈사고라서네 가서 파진 주기 냠데 내가 토비알라 바시제게 뇽 바시데 가르세네 뇽모 바드 뇽모 바샤데 제바 디 토비알라 바시 디레 제사 디파 바야게 뇽보 동방이 도베시라 곰 딩해진 데네 곰제 두스제네 곰제 냠네 제라디 다가 되가로 냠네 제사 송고로와 마도 등이 아디오세디기 안에 지금 가다 상이 신감이 안에 가라 상이 인생에 삼 뒤던 거 말아서 되냐면 집에 갑라.
The resultant Vajra vehicle is quite different from the approach we're more accustomed to in the Sutra vehicle. In the Sutra vehicle, there's no thought that I am a Buddha, my environment is that of a pure land. Rather, in the Sutra vehicle, we visualize Buddha Shakyamuni before oneself, and we train our mind in order to achieve a state the same as that of Buddha Shakyamuni. So here we are just engaging in the accumulation of causes in order to achieve the result of Buddhahood. There's no thought of, or no training of oneself as an enlightened being. Rather, we are striving to overcome our adventitious stains, our adventitious afflictions. And because we recognize that our afflictions are preventing us from attaining the state of enlightenment, as well as our undeveloped good qualities. So therefore, we train in cultivating good qualities such as the union of calm abiding and meditative insight. But there's no thought that one is already, no training as if one were already an enlightened being.
Dine zadang juge kasan kisnyama jishu chaware dodang ngi chebar de yadirwa dodang ngi lamnyamne chebar kar yore said dodang ngi chebar kar said sidu jisang juge 가지 뒤 코네 냠는 제야다 냠내지는 산지 고방 토야 되다 나게 되는 냠내 산지 고방 토야 돼 산지 제보 산지 고방 되라 캬바르 가요 말해서 집을 지게하래 캬바요 말 이날 람 냠는 지나라 캬바르 용그레스 디가르 요레스네 다 산지 고방 토데 산지 꿀이 용고로와 산지 꿀이 용고로와 지자 산지 신감 산지 코 산지 제바디게 안두스네 요레레 지지 제보로와 디 토비아로와 지자당 아주게 냠는 집에 갑라 딩 아주 용원에 아주기로 요 말로와 매바 있나요? 나가 냠는 집에 갑라 뭐바 제시에 아니 뭐바 제는 되랑 넘버 2버기다 저후직 인삼제 삼제 삼다다제 아니 라니나 아니 동바 동자제 동바의 삼다 동비 나래 라니는 지 가서 된다 된비 기고디 주야당 되네 기호디나리아 소소라랑게 답변을 가지고 하 도지지시 공부하는 도지지시 외인 삼제 고미야다 되네시 고미야시 도지 왜 말에 되네 소수겐 델리아 두스 동빙하라 삼다 도지 외인 삼비 고미야디 고나 지여바지 지산 긴고디게나 네 외네 산이 신감 외네 삼배 삼다 디 고미야디 나게 냠는jel라 되네게 삼다네 고미야 예데데 뇌 값소 냠는지데가 되네 요 말이디 토외게 유디바 냠는지 고미야마도 요 말에서지 두시는 아주 돼 도당 아니 캬바데 가르람나 제고 용다시다 넘버 2비 응원에 다디기 매네 대다 지기하러 지 넘버 3다지 람 내가서 냠는 집에 내가서 3다지 냠는 제 유비기 람기림바들 나게 저다 냠는 지다시 니네 매바제 유디사에게 규 파신주 냠는 대 산지 고마 토바야라 바도 지지기 님보 뇽모바데기 방야기 님보 동방이 도베 셰라곰 두스체는 냠네 제다지 아니 저기 뒤에 가는 냠네 제자 도당 아니 캬바르카레스 냠네 제림바 캬바르데네 세야지 다디나 다디 규다 TV 태진 람니 세야지 지송고르다나라.
In our previous class a couple of weeks ago, I spoke about the differences between Sutra and Tantra. So here we're seeing this presented again, that in terms of the result that one is striving to achieve, there is no difference. One is striving to become a perfectly enlightened being, a Buddha. But there is a great difference in the path that one is training in, or the technique for transforming the mind. There is a great difference. So in the tantric vehicle, one is training in these 4 purities, whilst one recognizes that one is still an ordinary being, striving to become a Buddha. One is not enlightened, but striving to become a Buddha. One trains as if one were a Buddha. So we have the 4 purities, and one of the body, of activities, of retinue and abode. And here one visualizes that, for example, the body is in the nature of emptiness, or we, not just our body, but we are in the nature of emptiness, just like the deity. And that from this state of emptiness, in other words, from one's mind that realizes emptiness, one manifests or rises in the state of an enlightened being, such as, for example, Yamantaka. Similarly, one's environment is in the nature no different from that of a pure land, in that it's empty of inherent existence. And from this realization of emptiness, from this consciousness that's realizing the emptiness of one's environment, the mandala manifests. And then similarly with one's activities and the retinue within the mandala. So in this way, one is training as if one is an enlightened being. And one does so, though, from one's realization of emptiness, supported by bodhicitta. So this is the way that one trains in the path of mantra. The sutra paths, though, are nothing like this. One is not training as if one is a Buddha. One is solely creating the causes to become a Buddha. So there is a vast difference here, not in terms of the result one's striving for, but in terms of the method to accumulate those causes to become a Buddha. In other words, the path.
니가로 거베 투몰라서 니가 세듯이 규바로듯이 베타바 냠는 타바데다 상아도지 타바 니가래 디니디서 니니가 라 고야기 투모 람데 니가 값수 냠는 제 고야기 람데라 투모 람라 고르스 제가 니니가 값수 람 냠는 제 투모 람세데 가르레라네 잠니제 장주셈 안에 파신 주기 냠는들이 제가 잠니제 장주셈 파신 주기 냠는디 뇌 냠는 제비 값래 디고 제고 거래 상하 도지티베 람 냠는 제바이나 잠니제 장주셈 파신 주기 냠는 고고레스 제자디 니가라 인지미지 냠는 디 고고레스 고반자 될이야 니가로 고베데 니가라 디 냠는 제바메나 안에 상이고바 톱투야요 말에 나게 값소이나 동반이 양검제 안에 파신 주기 냠는 진바도 수주저바 존재라서바다 장시셈 냠는 제바메나 안에 상이고바 톱투야요 말에 제래 제자 뒤에 값소이나 디 냠는 제바메나 상이도 고바 톱투야면 상이고바 톱발라 니게 값소 가르 냠는 고고레스네 잠니제 장주셈 파준 주게 냠는 어디 고고레스 제가 니가로 거비 델람 투모하라 그래서 제가 잠니제 장주셈 파준 주게 냠는 데라 나람 투모하 뒤에 가는 냠는 제 람딜라 람 투모하 세지라 거다 뒤에 가는 냠는 제 람딜 민람 투모하라 거 그래서 디 뒤에 가서 냠는 제가 상하 도지 티베 냠는 제 니게 가서 제고 제가 니가로 거비 투모람 세어라 투모람 디레서 투모람 디 냠는 제디 잠니제 장주셈
The first two lines of the verse again. Having cultivated in precisely that way the required paths shared by both the Supreme Mahayana causal and resultant paths. So if you looked at this section, Mahayana causal and resultant paths, now we look to the words before, the required paths shared. So this then refers to that there's this relationship between the sutra part, the sutra division of the Mahayana and the tantric division, that these two have a relationship. There is a sharing of a basis in training, or they are trainings in common. The word shared can also be in common. So there's this relationship between the two. And in order to achieve the resultant state of Buddhahood, one needs to train in the sutra and tantric paths, in both of them. And this is because in order through the sutric paths to progress towards Buddhahood, one has to train in love, compassion and the six perfections. Similarly, in order for tantric practice to bear its fruit, one has to have trained in the sutric paths of love, compassion, bodhicitta and the six perfections. There is no difference there in terms of the requirement to train in the sutric trainings of love, compassion, bodhicitta, and the six perfections. Whether one is, for now, focusing solely on the sutric methods, or whether one is now engaging in the tantric paths, then that basis of the sutric trainings is required. So that is the meaning of this clause, the required paths shared by both the Supreme Mahayana causal and resultant paths. The very first words of the first line, having cultivated in precisely that way. Again, this then refers to something I mentioned earlier in the class. These stages of training have been set down in a specific sequence, a sequence to develop strength of mind, breadth of outlook, and a strength of determination. And through training in a specific sequence, in an unmistaken manner, one will give rise to great love, great compassion, bodhicitta, and the realizations of the six perfections. So therefore, it's essential to train precisely in the correct manner.
Denegi jamni chanjo sim pajan juge nyamne denegi rimba nyamne jene ana garche ores na nga nyamne jebala di nyamne jin dene kiene dene kebe debungi gonla dene sedo da kebe debo sedo nga nyamne keba lama tsingi de demba denegi debun sedo ya an sanga dojitibe lamla dene ya sangyo ko hwal ya chiba de bala na zu dirwa bene nyele ya semjan da je chi ma de de ba se ora dina shi nga so ya sanje sal ya pa gwe khen de ge dine kebe lama tsingyi tenpa chiliya, loben chiliya, an digi guan, dela teni eso da, guan la teni esen, di zane wang tu shu xe, an din du xe ne wang shu hu re esen. Dine wang shu ba la teni, an nyamlen chi hu re si du, chiza kepe debun gi, guan la teni esen, an yu di gyatso che si du, yu li ya nyamlen che hu di che hu re esen.
And the verse concludes with the next two lines. Rely on a protecting, wise navigator to enter the great ocean of the classes of Tantra. So here, having trained well, one needs to rely on a authentic, a genuine Vajra master. So just like if one is being taken across an ocean, one doesn't have the skill oneself, one needs to rely on someone who is skilled and experienced. And that is the meaning here. Rely on a protecting, wise navigator to enter the great ocean of the classes of Tantra.
Na gyudi Gyatso sine gyu se de na ga nga nyamle je do gyu song she ge dang an zo nem yin nga ga nyamle ko song che be tsik ti ge la song che be je ti ge ya gyu se la go dan an zo da de ne nga ga nyamle ba pha jin du da de ne ge ge bu chung ye la jing ge lam ye den ba ne de ne ge de song che be tsik song de san yi song de ge la do la go ma gyu la go ma ba对，因为那个年龄个送去比去的个忙活车上了，就是举那个话，就是多当举些的，的呢，这个给我穷也拉米人吧，真个拉米人吧，的呢给我全部对，可能送去拉米人吧，送一个3亿个的，别些忙活了，车上就是了多送我3亿送去呗。举些的3亿嘛，那个年龄个送去比个，但别些的个车上举些个话，车上举的介绍些的那个举送去呗，介绍那些，你家全部这得了呀，那年龄结果了下去。
Here we see this verse concludes with the expression, the classes of Tantra. So one has already cultivated the trainings of the sutra paths, develop those paths within oneself, those which are shared with the practitioner of initial and intermediate capacity, as well as those which are unique to a practitioner of greatest capacity. So having developed the sutra trainings within oneself, now one is qualified to enter into the classes of Tantra. So these were the 4 classes that we heard about last time and briefly earlier tonight. And here, in order, just like with our trainings in the Sutra vehicle, where we relied on a skilled and qualified teacher, so too here, in order to navigate the great ocean of the classes of Tantra, one needs a fully qualified Vajra master. If you wonder to yourself, of the sutras and the tantras, which is actually more expansive, or the analogy of the ocean, of these 2 oceans, which is the greater? It's actually the more expansive is that of the tantras.
Gyatso ma jin zhusin nang zhuo ne, zhusin nang le ya zui ba de shu ba si go da, nam zhu nang le zui ne, nam zhu na shu che, de ne nam zhu pu zhu go ba, an di na shu ne si go. Che sang an zhu shu ne si de xi de ga sa wang shu che, da do na sang an nyam len che ge la me zhen de wang shu che che, wang shu ne, de ne de dong ha ge nyam len che le guo zu yong de si go shu ne si da wang shu cha da de ne ge 지게 발 냠내제 고주 주바 네 되네야 왕슈의 상아들지티바 람 냠내제 발이 나려야 슈바에 넘저날 주바다 지바차라 슈니 되네 안에 가져서 용조 맹아 댄스 용조 세대다 라메기 냠낸 디제알이야 마 맹아 디제 오래 그 냠낸 디제 되네 되제 오래 되네 제 오래서 라메 곰 되네 자워든 마 송셰기 라메 맹아 댄스게 저러와 당보 디콤 니바 디콤 거래 데네신 디제 월사 람기 림비게 냠는 지림바 마 송셰바 차사 알람이 송셰비 돈바다 담시 아니 냠는 지림바 차사 도시 데 댄세도 소수기 당도를 냠는 제바식으로.
The next line, through relying on perfect and complete spiritual instructions. So this then follows from before, to enter the great ocean of the classes of Tantra. So to enter the great ocean of the classes of Tantra, one first, from an authentic Vajramaster, needs to receive an initiation, as well as then to fulfill one's pledges and vows that one receives at the time of initiation. So this is how one enters into the great oceans of the classes of Tantra. Having received an initiation and one's vows and pledges, one is then ready to rely on perfect and complete spiritual instructions.
di nyamle cheba longondo tene tene sik tupure se longondo tene tupure se ma kana ta ngondo chup sawi chelan tene ge lam kirim gi ina nga jogi dan lame gi nyam cheda sanga tu chiki ne kirim tu chenen chik kirim tene tene kirim komna tene tene kom gore sa di sawi chelen zorim gi lam yin ba nyamle cheda tene tene resin ma lame gi rimbe ba den sha be den an del ya tu chenen an ji damsi sungugure said sangwa chegora shanlaya kacho majo de kapra tangyo mas lami kana de chasa yonsu tubye ndu chene nyamlen chewa na tempa se menga yonsu menga tempa se de lami kana wana ju sosugi nyamlen cheba de la ane yonsu menga tempa se de nyamlen cheba se kugura.
The perfect and complete spiritual instructions upon which to rely will first be having already cultivated the paths of the sutra within one's continuum, then one will be given instructions in terms of preliminary practices, additional preliminary practices to engage in. Thereafter, one will receive further perfect and complete spiritual instructions in relation to the generation stage of the deity to whom one has been initiated, and thereafter, one will receive perfect and complete spiritual instructions in relation to the completion stage trainings in relation to that particular deity. And all of these, one needs to engage in following the advice precisely, putting it into practice, cultivating in one's mind precisely as one's Vajramaster has told one.
The D said, the name Yamnaja Kasa D or D said, the Sikh Tama Tempa D says to what, the name Yamnaja Kasa D or the Ju Toba Donna Temperature, said you, the Ju Toba Donna Temperature, said the other around to give Lu Tende and then you give me top to your rest. Just down Donna Temperature and doing the Garrison, the Yamnan said this. Doing around to doing on the Garrison. 산지 고방 토해야 돼. 뒤에 엄마들 들어봐. 내가 저거 산지 고방 토해야 돼. 지난 산지 고방 토해기 뒤에 산지 고방 미유 된 뒤주변에 된다라 저게 대신에 셔봐. 잠니제 장슈샘 파진주게 냠면제 되네. 상아도지베 람레 왕슈 상아도지베 람냠레 제디 다데 때 단주 토비기 리된 디텔이야 냠레제나 차사 냠는 지기 뉴버 차사 유되게 튕제 차사 띵게 차네 튕게 차사 좀 되고 지리 되네자 당아주기 되네기 띵 개발전 냠는 제투에 띵 개발전 되네 지기 강려야 예비 링라 냠는 제 마투바 있나 아니 배 판부시오레스 되네자 띵델이야 냠는 제고레스 지산 되네 임바나 띵냠는 제바이나 대시 셰바나이도 냠는 제바는 띵디 뇌나 대바 차고레스 지산 띵델이야 다시기 류딘디 되네게 냠는 제투에 뉴바디 여바텔라 냠는 제바이나 냠는 다시 토베게 돈나 덴바레스 돈나 다시 토베 고바 두바레스 그러다 고바 두고레스 된나.
Through relying on perfect and complete spiritual instructions, make meaningful these freedoms and opportunities you have obtained. So here Geshe Rinpoche is exhorting us. Through following my advice as I've presented here, this tremendous opportunity that has been achieved with your life. In other words, these tremendous causes that you've accumulated in the past, and now you're experiencing as a precious human rebirth with the 18 freedoms and opportunities. Through training in the way that I have presented here, through training precisely in the way that I've presented here, first in cultivating the qualities of the sutra path within oneself, in particular having trained in the practices shared with a being of small and initial capacity, of initial and intermediate capacity, thereafter generating love, compassion, bodhicitta, and training in the 6 perfections, and now through training also in the paths of secret mantra, or cultivating the paths of secret mantra, this tremendous life you have achieved, you are fulfilling its potential. This amazing opportunity that came with this rebirth, that you yourself accumulated the causes for, you are fulfilling its purpose and not letting it go to waste. This is a tremendous achievement should you train in this way. And training in this way, what has been achieved will be utilized to its fullest extent.
Gyatso sem parshim chuge sam ta nyamlen je dena yang zo nga ge wong shu nga ge nyamlen che ba ina sanje ko bon tu bi de sanje ji di ko bon tu bi gyu di cha sa de nga zo le den ba yo ba cha go le ding go le je de yo ba cha go de yo ba ina da den ba ina da dig de nga sanje ko bon tu bi gyu di nga zo ge sa go le je sa de ju tu bi de na den ba cha go le dene ge nga zo ge luden da ju ge luden de top de bi den de ya dene ge 지게 냠냠 맞아 봐이나 롭정 맞아 봐이나 는 유지 사고 말했어. 제사데 다주 투비 되나 딩고 말했어. 되나 딩고 말해서 데니기가 저기 된 캬바전 dum니비 자침부 주여 봐이네. 딩한 저기 베젓 땅마토 바차고 해서 돈나 디스무도와
Making meaningful these freedoms and opportunities you have obtained. Here we are in the 43rd verse. So now through what we have been training in over these 2.5 years, it's not just that we've achieved a precious human rebirth, but that we are making great use of this precious human rebirth. Over this period of time, receiving these many teachings and engaging in the meditations, we have been training our mind in the various stages of the path of the sutra vehicle. And now we're coming to hear about the mantra vehicle. Many of you will have already received initiation into a deity practice. So this all has been obtained. It's not just that one has a human rebirth marked with the 10 freedoms and the 8 opportunities, but that this rebirth is already being utilized well. You've met the Dharma, you've met a fully qualified spiritual teacher, and you are engaging in receiving teachings, studying them, and meditating on them. And in this way, this unparalleled, precious opportunity is being used incredibly well.
nenjue ya nyamlen de tarki sede nyama nge ne ha ane chege jam ni je da tangbo ki wo chungyo lam yirim ba lo chang ki wo jing yirim lam rim lo chang dene jam ni je janju sem parsin ju nyamlen je dene ane ka sa lame zane ane wong shu ane de nga ge nyamlen ju du si ne nyamlen de ne je ba yin so na jue nge ya nyamlen de tarki singe de ne je ba yin ane I,
a yogi, of practice in this manner, you who aspire for liberation should do likewise. Je Rinpoche then is encouraging us to follow his example, to practice just like he did, training first in those trainings shared with the practitioner of initial capacity, and as we strengthen our mind and our outlook, training those shared with the practitioner of intermediate capacity. And as we develop ever further, then engage in the trainings unique to practitioner of greatest capacity. First, the sutra trainings of cultivating love, compassion, and bodhicitta, and thereafter the 6 perfections. And then, into the mantra vehicle through initially receiving an initiation from an authentic Vajra master, through protecting well our vows and commitments, and then training just like he did. So this is what we're being encouraged to do, to follow his example.
타르드의 계장 대신 양사로서 타르드에서 결혼서 이내야 고유 동안에 탈고 고유 동안에 처지 띵이 되어 상지 고방 투구고래 결혼서 고유 동안에 타르드요래 지상 고유 동안 딜레 타르제 탈바다 탐지킨 고방 토에게 터버 뒤고래서 결혼서 이내 되는 되어 인자 안에 되네게 되어 있나 탈바 탐지킨 고방 토에게 람 냠레 규디 파사고 그래서 규냠는 지고래 마도 규냠는 마제바이나 톱투고 말해 되는 인자 대신 장차로 세도 내 대신세도 내 냠는 제바 나신소다 두두시는 내 냠는 제바 나신 결혼서 이내 되네 냠는 지고래서
All beings, all sentient beings are the same in having a desire to be freed of pain and misery. We ourselves, as Gyatso Rinpoche's students, have recognized this, and thereby we aspire for liberation. So what we share with all other ordinary beings is a wish to be freed of pain and misery, and to live or to abide in peace and tranquility that's undisturbed by any arisal of discomfort. Whilst we share that with other beings, we are part of a very small group who have recognized the causes for suffering and as well as have come to understand the method to achieve liberation from suffering. So we can count ourselves amongst those who aspire for liberation. Here, though, we should not leave this as a mere aspiration, but we should strive to make best use of the opportunity we have in order to achieve our goal of a state liberated from suffering. We must strive in accumulating the causes to bring about that desired result. And Gyatso Rinpoche has set an unparalleled example, and for us now to follow his example, we can be confident that we will achieve the self-same result that he did achieve. Now, you have all, having received these teachings, you've heard how to meditate on all the trainings which are shared with the practitioner of initial capacity. You've also heard how to engage in the meditations of the trainings shared with the practitioner of intermediate capacity, as well as you've heard about how to engage in the trainings which are unique to a practitioner of greatest capacity, as well as had a brief introduction to how to enter into the paths of Tantra. So all of this has been covered over these 2.5 years.
Lam Rim Chembola Soba Lam Rim Dudentiki, Sung Guebeki, and then Gumsenda, Gobata Gumsenda, and Dejele, Sonam Gyatso that Lam Rim Sershima, and Sung Guebi, Gobata, Gumse, Dijes, and the Dihor Mashia Regima.
Gyatso Rinpoche composed so many texts. Amongst the greatest was the Lam Rim Chemo, the Great Lam Rim, which is he composed a shorter version, the middling length, and then the very shortest Lam Rim, the Song of Spiritual Experience. And then the Dalai Lama, the Gelwa Sonam Gyatso, he composed this text, the Essence of Refined Gold, as a commentary to Gyatso Rinpoche's essence, Song of Spiritual Experience, the short Lam Rim. And that's now what we're coming to the end of.
That in the Dangan, that Gunolia, and Jigget, Semja, 잠니제 고미야 삼다야다 땅은 주게 남이림바 냠len제다 태바침배 남이림바 지스르 잠니제 냠len제 삼다 되네 semja 탐제 상요고방 토벌쇼 세베 전주 sem지 삼다 안디 된다 상요고방 퇴비치도 되네 나기 진바다 수준의 수비기 냠len 강토비지기 세베 삼다네 나 소수게 려가로지 가르치 제베네 되네 톨이야 안 샹리야 펜페치도 인세베게 당아주 삼노 자위르스 Samadine Dayada, and the Negi, and Jika Sosugi, Wong Shu Simba, the one Tobio by net, to the one Tobje, Tobio by the Sosugi, now in Yamakarchi, that is where the Negi Yamlenchi USMB Dambo, Dusjan the sometime. Then that has Matova, the name Moba, the Negi Yamlenchi, Gohapta, and the Negi Rawa Show Simpiki, Mevada, and Dumachi, Molam Giada, and Dusjane, and then Jaya, the Yeshimora Chagurwa. Wang Shui Chengagi Yamlin that never in a Moba that in the chair of Gobrawa that the Negi Dusine Molam Jada Dusine Mon Dumbata Molam capture to Shebana.
I encourage you in your meditations to emphasize the cultivation of love and compassion and the generation of bodhicitta, the determination to become a Buddha for the sake of others. And whatever other topics you're including in your meditation, do have these. And then, in all your activities throughout the day, regenerate love, compassion, and bodhicitta, so that whatever one is doing, it is motivated by love and compassion. How one communicates with others, how one interacts with others, or engages in activities on one's own, always do so with the motivation of bodhicitta. And in this way, you carry this motivation of bodhicitta around with you, and whatever one is engaging in will thereby become the accumulation of causes that will lead to the state of enlightenment for the sake of others. And for those of you who have already received an initiation, I encourage you to keep your commitments well, to keep your vows and pledges well. And for those who haven't yet received an initiation, make strong and sincere prayers to receive to attain, to accumulate the causes to have the opportunity to receive initiation from a qualified teacher.
Dini o ngāgi ñamlin chedā dini rīdu samla dini tangu chedā dini rīdu wa sambhigida chāsāng chīngu yīni suda hāgu tūruwa chedā dini ngāgi ñamlin samla chi lobchōng ma chebe ni pārro thōngya dā mi chigi dini ki chigi lamsā dini chi pārro thōngya dā dini chi mi chiyandāgi chigi sheba samla ya ishe chebe na ane di ngūyini suda tātā hamu wa che ane jichelia, ane susuki tuwa machona, dine delia, ane chike delo kia da, dine ki nyaba chimbosa nyanga yoro, dine zada ko nyamlen che tangi rinpa ro shi maana tangbo kara chigo, niwa kara chigo re, ndusu chini cheba samtawa na oda dine jida, da nga ki nyamlen dine shiredo wa sanpege da, thago bayi na, dine ngone ra susuki meba timbo re le tukuruwa.
We've looked at in some detail how to engage in the meditations relating to the sutra vehicle. Such knowledge is also required of the tantric vehicle in order to be able to skillfully and successfully engage in the trainings of the tantric vehicle. Because it's all too easy, especially if one lacks detailed knowledge, to have misunderstandings and to make consequential errors. For example, one may have a misunderstanding of the role of consult practice and think, I've received initiation, I've received a few teachings, I'm now qualified to engage in consult practice. This is a grave error. One needs to understand how to train one's mind as well as to have gained some success in the training of one's mind. One needs to have a good overview of the entire practice and experience in this practice. Just like with the sutra trainings, there is a specific sequence to engage in order for the desired results to be achieved. So therefore, in the tantric vehicle as well, one requires both the good foundation of the sutra training as well as a lot of knowledge or deep knowledge of the tantric methods. So thank you. We'll conclude here for tonight.